The moment she stepped between the cop's gun and that biker's chest, her entire town stopped calling her Naomi. They called her a traitor. Naomi Carter had scrubbed that diner floor so many times she could almost see her reflection in it. It was the only thing in the place still shining. The booth cushions were split. The fans made that slow, whining squeak. And the tip jar beside the register had 3 coins in it, and one was Canadian. She stood behind the counter wiping the same spot again and again, not because it was dirty, but because doing nothing felt worse. The breakfast crowd used to fill the place. Now, the only regular was the silence. Her daddy's photo still hung by the kitchen door, watching over a room that didn't laugh anymore. Outside, the town looked the same. Still quiet, pretending not to be dying. Half the stores were closed. The factory that once paid every family's bills was just a shell now. And Carter's diner, the last piece of Naomi's family legacy, was bleeding out slow. Then the door creaked open, and the tiny bell above it let out a tired jingle. She looked up, and the whole air shifted. He filled the doorway like a shadow, broad-shouldered, 6-foot-something, dressed in weathered black leather that looked like it had been through a war. His boots were dusty. His beard was thick and wild. The patch on his back was unmistakable, a skeletal reaper gripping a scythe. The room froze. 2 farmers in the back put down their forks. A white couple near the window leaned in and whispered. Even the radio stuttered into static. But Naomi's eyes weren't on the patch. They were on the small plastic band poking out from under his sleeve. Hospital bracelet, fresh. His hands were shaking a little, not from fear, but from exhaustion. He walked with a limp and lowered himself onto the stool at the far end of the counter, the one her daddy used to sit at every morning before his stroke. Naomi grabbed a glass, filled it with ice water, and walked it over. Her hands didn't shake, but her heart was pounding. "Welcome to Carter's," she said softly, setting the glass down. "You want a menu, or just coffee to start?" The biker looked up at her, his eyes pale blue and tired, like he hadn't slept in days. He nodded once. "Coffee? Black? Whatever's hot." She turned, grabbed the old pot off the burner. As she poured, she saw his knuckles were bruised, his breathing shallow. "Long night?" she asked gently. He didn't answer right away. "Willow Creek Medical," he finally muttered. "My daughter. Stage 4. Naomi's stomach dropped. He stared into the black swirl of his coffee like it held him together. She slid a plate across the counter. Toast and eggs. On the house. He blinked, startled. Then nodded once, eyes glassy. Behind her, someone scoffed. The diner door opened again. This time, the silence came with tension, tight and sharp. Naomi didn't have to turn to know who it was. She recognized the boots before they hit the tile. Dean Harper, local cop racist. Proud of it. He strolled in like he owned the floor, his badge catching the light, his mouth already curling into a smirk. "Well, well," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You serving that kind of man now, Naomi?" She didn't flinch. Dean walked right up to the counter, leaned in beside the biker. "Didn't know Carter's was offering biker discounts. Or has the policy changed since your daddy passed?" The biker said nothing, just drank his coffee. Naomi looked at Dean square in the eyes. "I serve anyone who walks in peaceful. Same as always." Dean chuckled. "You got pride, Naomi. Or you did. Thought you were smarter than this." She didn't blink. "He's not the one making noise in here." Dean stared at her long and hard. Then at the biker. His hand hovered near his belt. That's when Naomi stepped forward, placing herself between them. And just like that, the line was drawn. The diner was quiet, but the air felt loud. Naomi could feel every stare pressing into her skin. Dean leaned closer, lips curled like he was tasting something sour. "You know who that is, right?" he said, jerking his thumb toward the biker. "That patch doesn't mean charity rides and hot dogs." The biker didn't move, just kept sipping his coffee. Calm. Too calm. Naomi stayed rooted. He hasn't done a damn thing wrong. Dean scoffed, eyes narrowing. Yet. Behind him, Deputy Laura Miles hovered by the door. She looked uncomfortable. She always did when Dean went off script. Her eyes darted between Naomi and the biker, unsure where to land. Dean stepped back a little and raised his voice for the whole room. "Folks, if you're wondering why this place has been going downhill, now you know. Carter's Diner welcomes thugs." The older white couple near the window stood up and left. The bell above the door jingled behind them like a slap. Naomi's jaw tightened. The biker reached slowly into his jacket, moving with care. Naomi noticed how his hand trembled. He wasn't reaching for a weapon. He was getting his wallet. Dean's hand shot to his holster. "Don't even think about it." The biker froze. Naomi raised her voice, sharp like broken glass. "He's getting his ID." Dean didn't lower his hand. "You don't get to vouch for people like him." "I just did," she snapped. He turned to her, face darkening. "You really want to go down for this, Naomi? You want to be the black woman who stood between the badge and a patch?" Naomi stepped closer, never blinking. "I want to be the woman who didn't stand by and let a man get harassed because he looks like someone you're scared of." Dean laughed cold. "Scared? I ain't scared. I know what that patch means. Drugs, guns, blood. And you—" he jabbed a finger toward her chest. "You're letting him sit here like he's normal." The biker finally looked up. "You don't know anything about me." Dean turned on him. "I know enough. I've seen your kind leave bodies on the side of the road." Naomi had heard enough. "You got a problem, Dean," she said, voice low and steady. "But it's not with him. It's with the fact that someone who doesn't fit your idea of good is sitting quietly, drinking coffee, and not giving you a reason to draw your gun." Dean looked at her like she'd cursed his mother. "You're making a big mistake." "No," Naomi replied. "You are." She walked behind the counter, grabbed the plate of food she'd prepared, and slid it in front of the biker. He blinked, surprised. "Eat." Dean's face was burning now, fists clenched. "You just made your business a target, Carter." Naomi shrugged. "It already was. You just made it loud." Dean looked around the diner. Half the seats were empty now. The few people left pretended to stare at their coffee. No one spoke. No one helped. He threw a crumpled dollar on the counter. "You'll regret this." As he turned to leave, Laura hesitated. She looked at Naomi, then at the biker, then back at Dean. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. She followed Dean out, the door swinging shut behind her like it was slamming the truth in their faces. The biker exhaled slow, picked up a fork. "You didn't have to do that," he said. Naomi grabbed the coffee pot, topped off his cup. "Yes, I did." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Name's Hank." "Naomi." He paused, then added, "Jessie's my daughter." 18. They said she's got weeks left. I drove all night just to sit by her bed." Naomi's voice softened. "That bracelet. I've seen too many like it. My dad. He was in and out of hospitals before the stroke took his voice." Hank lowered his eyes. "She was always the tough one. But now, she can't even eat." Naomi slid a napkin across the counter. Her hand brushed his. "I don't care what's on your jacket. You're a father." He nodded slowly. Outside, the town went on, pretending it didn't see what just happened. But inside that diner, something had shifted. Naomi didn't say it aloud, but she knew. She'd just made a decision that would cost her everything. And still, she would have made it again. The next morning, Naomi found the sign before she even unlocked the door. Cardboard. Thick red paint. Crooked letters slashed across it like a warning. "No biker lovers. No traitors. Not in our town." She didn't flinch. She peeled it off the glass, slow, crumpled it in her hand, and dropped it into the trash. But the message stayed burned behind her eyes. Inside the diner, the silence felt colder than usual. She flipped the sign to open and brewed a fresh pot of coffee. But no one came. No Mrs. Tillman with her crossword puzzle. No Marvin and his dry jokes. Not even Joe Larkin, who used to swear by her cornbread. By 10 a.m., the only sound in Carter's diner was the soft squeak of the fan and the occasional scrape of her dish rag on the counter. At noon, she stopped pretending anyone would show. She sat in the corner booth, head bowed, and let the weight of it all fall into her chest. Her phone buzzed. Group chat. Muted. A single text from a friend she'd known since middle school. "Naomi, why'd you have to go and embarrass yourself like that?" Another message from someone she barely knew. "Did you really serve one of those killers? Is that who you're standing with now?" She didn't answer either. She stared out the window and watched the street she grew up on treat her like she was something foreign. Something foul. Even online, the whispers had started. She served a gang member. Protected him. Guess she forgot who she is. Naomi leaned back in the booth and looked up at the ceiling. "You seeing this, Daddy?" she whispered. The photo of her father still hung in the same spot near the kitchen, his eyes kind, his apron stained from decades of eggs and grease and burnt toast. He used to say, "Judge a man by what he does, not what he wears." He also used to say, "This town don't like things it don't understand." Both were true. She got up, wiped her eyes, and went back behind the counter. She wasn't going to let them see her cry. Not today. Later that evening, she stopped by the hospital. Room 214. Her father's room. He hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. Stroke took more than his words. It took his laugh, his temper, his fire. But Naomi still visited every day, still talked to him like he could hear everything. She sat beside the bed, took his hand gently. "Hey, Daddy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I did something yesterday. I stood up for someone." She swallowed. "They didn't like it. I knew they wouldn't. But he reminded me of you. Rough hands, quiet eyes. That kind of tired you don't get from just driving too long. That kind of tired that comes from watching someone you love slip away." Her father's hand twitched, maybe just a reflex, but it made her squeeze tighter. "I think I did right. Even if it costs me the diner. Even if I end up alone." She paused. Let the silence sit for a while. "I just wish you could tell me I did okay." The heart monitor beeped soft and steady. No answer. No sign. Just the quiet breath of a man who once told her, Doing the right thing means you'll often stand alone. She stood up, kissed his hand, and turned to leave. Outside the hospital, the night air was thick and hot. Crickets sang. The world moved on. But Naomi knew her world had shifted. Not because of what she did, but because of what it revealed. This town wasn't her home anymore. Not in the way it used to be. But she wasn't going anywhere. The sun hadn't even cleared the rooftops when Naomi unlocked the diner the next day. She moved slow, like someone carrying weight no one else could see. Her apron was wrinkled, her sneakers still damp from last night's rain, and her eyes were dull with sleep she hadn't gotten. She didn't expect customers, didn't expect kindness. The sign from yesterday still echoed in her mind, louder than church bells. By 8 a.m., the coffee pot was full, and untouched. By 9, she had cleaned the counters twice just to stay busy. At 10, she stared out the window like she was waiting for something to break the stillness. Then the bell above the door jingled. She didn't even look up. Probably a supplier dropping something late or a lost traveler looking for directions. But then she heard boots. 2 sets. Slow, heavy, deliberate. She turned and froze. A man and woman stood at the threshold, sunlight casting long shadows behind them. The man looked about 50, tall, lean, with road-worn jeans and a jacket that bore a silver skull pin on the chest. The woman beside him had long gray hair in a tight braid, her denim vest faded but clean, her eyes soft and steady. Both wore patches, different chapters, same symbol, the Reaper. Naomi's chest tightened. "You, Naomi Carter?" the man asked. She nodded slowly. "Yeah." He stepped forward, held out a hand. "Roy Morrison. This is my wife, Linda, Hank's older brother." Naomi hesitated, then shook it. Firm grip. Warm. No threat. "How's Jessie?" she asked quietly. Linda's smile faltered just a little. "They're trying something new. Experimental. It's the last shot." "I'm sorry," Naomi said, and meant it. Roy looked around the empty diner. "Hank told us what happened." "He wanted to come himself," Linda added, "but he's still at the hospital. Jessie's not doing great." Naomi gave a small nod, unsure of what to say, unsure of why they were here. Then Roy smiled. "He said you treated him like a man when no one else would, that you stood up for him." Linda added softly, "Said you didn't look at the patch. You looked at the person." Naomi shrugged. Didn't seem like he needed a fight. Seemed like he needed a plate of food. Roy chuckled. "Sometimes those are the same thing." Naomi offered coffee. They accepted. She poured slow, hands steady, but her mind racing. Something about them felt heavy, like they weren't just here to say thank you. When Roy finished his cup, he looked up at her. "We wanted to return the kindness." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "With coffee?" He grinned. "With support." Before she could ask what that meant, he nodded toward the window. "Give it a minute." Naomi turned, and her breath caught in her throat. There was a sound rising in the distance. Faint at first. A low rumble, like thunder rolling across a dry sky. It grew louder, closer, sharper. She stepped out from behind the counter and moved to the window, eyes wide. From both ends of Main Street, the horizon shimmered with chrome. Motorcycles. Dozens at first. Then more. Dozens turned into 100. Then more. They came in waves, engine after engine growling like wolves answering a call. Every rider wore a patch. Different towns, different states, same brotherhood, the symbol of the Reaper. Naomi stood frozen as they rolled in, surrounding the diner like a fortress of leather and steel. Boots hit pavement. Engines shut down. The noise faded into a hum of soft voices and shared purpose. Roy stood beside her now, watching her reaction. "What is this?" she whispered. Linda smiled, eyes bright. Hank told his chapter. They told others. Word travels fast in our world. Naomi could barely speak. "But that's over 200 people." Roy's voice didn't waver. "Because when the world turns its back on us, we remember the ones who didn't." The bell above the door jingled again. The first riders stepped inside, quiet, respectful, heads nodding toward Naomi like she was someone important. They filled the booths, leaned against walls, made space where there was none. Naomi blinked. "I don't have enough food for all these people." Linda smiled. "Taken care of. We called your suppliers last night. Trucks are on their way. Costs covered." Naomi felt dizzy. "By who?" Roy answered without pause. "By us. Consider it an investment in kindness." Outside, townspeople had gathered on porches, behind windows, across the street. They watched, whispered, but didn't look away. And slowly, curiously, one by one, some began to cross. Naomi had never seen Carter's diner this full, not even during the Christmas pancake drives her father used to host. Every table was packed, every booth overflowed, and still the riders kept coming, nodding politely, tipping their caps, some standing shoulder to shoulder, just happy to be there. They didn't ask for special treatment. They didn't flash money or shout orders. They sat quietly, boots dusted from the road, jackets patched with places Naomi had never even heard of. Some had rough beards, scarred hands, and hard eyes. Others looked like grandpas who should have been at home watching baseball. A few women leaned against the counter, tattoos crawling up their arms, sipping black coffee like it was sacred. Outside, the rumble had stopped, but the town had started to stir. Neighbors peered from behind blinds. A group of teens lingered near the sidewalk, staring. People watched like they were witnessing something that wasn't supposed to happen in a place like Willow Creek. Then the door opened again. Naomi looked up. Malik, her old classmate, the same one who hadn't returned her calls in months, stepped inside. He gave a short wave, grinning awkwardly. "You still serving those biscuits?" he said. "Or are you all out?" Naomi stared for a beat, then laughed, honest, surprised, and maybe a little relieved. "Still serving," she said, "but you might have to share a table." "No problem," Malik replied, sliding into a seat beside a biker with a pink mohawk and a patch that read, "Reapers don't quit." Others followed. A school teacher, an old man from church, a single mom with a toddler on her hip. They trickled in, cautious but curious, some still holding judgment, others letting it go. And something incredible began to happen. Conversations started. First in low voices, then louder, then laughter. Malik slapped dominoes on a back table, teaching two bikers how to score, yelling, "Draw 4!" like it was the NBA Finals. Mrs. Worthington, yes, the same woman who once clutched her pearls, was now in deep conversation with a biker who looked like he could lift a truck with one hand. They were trading quilt patterns. Naomi moved through it all like someone watching a dream unfold. She poured coffee, flipped burgers, slid pies across the counter. At one point, she caught herself smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. A few of the bikers had helped unload supply trucks when they arrived. No one asked them to. They just did it. Bags of flour, cartons of eggs, sacks of potatoes, all passed hand to hand in quiet rhythm. Naomi didn't have enough staff to keep up, so she called a few neighbors, ones she thought wouldn't pick up. They came anyway. The youth group from her old church. A quiet lady from down the road. Even her landlord showed up with extra dish towels. No one asked questions. No one brought up yesterday. They just worked. They cooked, cleaned, served, for hours. In one corner, Naomi saw a biker tying a napkin around a toddler's neck before handing him a pancake shaped like a bear. The toddler squealed. In another, she spotted Deputy Laura Miles, no badge, no uniform, sitting at the counter. Naomi didn't say a word. She just poured coffee and slid it over. Laura nodded once, grateful, ashamed. It didn't matter. This moment was bigger than her. Naomi leaned against the kitchen pass-through window, watching the scene unfold. Her diner was alive again. But it wasn't just full. It was full of something else, something rare, understanding, peace, a quiet, burning kind of unity that didn't need speeches or headlines. Just food, just respect, just a seat at the table. Naomi looked over at her father's photo, hanging above the door like it always had been. "I wish you could see this," she whispered. "It's everything you wanted this place to be." And for the first time in a long, long time, it felt like maybe, just maybe, Willow Creek was waking up. The bell above the door jingled once more, but this time the laughter and chatter dimmed on their own. Something about the sound felt different, like a shift in the air before a thunderstorm. Naomi looked up and saw him. He was massive, broad-shouldered, beard white and thick like winter snow. His black leather vest stretched across a chest built like a freight train. His boots were worn smooth at the soles, and the chain on his wallet clinked softly as he stepped forward. Across his back, stitched in heavy thread, President, Grim Reapers, MC, Riverside, Chapter. People made space without being asked. Naomi wiped her hands and stepped out from behind the counter before she even knew why. The man stopped in front of her, smiling with a warmth that contrasted everything about his look. He held out a hand. "You must be Naomi," he said, voice deep, gravelly, but full of something human. She shook his hand firmly. "Welcome to Carter's." He chuckled. "You've made quite an impression on the family." Then he turned toward the room, raising one hand like he was addressing a congregation. And in a way, he was. The diner fell silent. Every booth, every chair, every corner of the packed room waited. "I wanted to take a minute," he began, "to thank Miss Naomi Carter here." He nodded toward her with respect. Because when others turned their backs, she didn't. When others looked at a man and saw a patch, she saw a father. Heads nodded. Some murmured quiet amens. Some just looked at Naomi with something new in their eyes. "In our world," he continued, "loyalty means something. Respect means everything. And we don't forget when someone shows it." He turned slightly, looking around the room. "So, from this day forward, Carter's Diner rides under the protection of the Grim Reapers." The cheer was instant, loud enough to shake the walls. Boots stomped against the floor. Fists hit tables in celebration. The energy snapped like a match being struck. Naomi stood frozen, breath caught in her chest. She looked across the room and saw Hank standing by the window, arms crossed over his chest. He wasn't smiling wide, but the pride in his eyes spoke louder than any applause. The president raised his hand again, and the noise died down. He wasn't finished. "And if anyone in this town has a problem with that," he said, voice hardening just slightly, "they'll have a problem with all of us." The weight of the room shifted. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. His eyes moved to the counter, specifically to Deputy Laura Miles, who sat holding her coffee like it was the only thing anchoring her in place. Their eyes met. Laura didn't say anything, but after a moment, she nodded slowly. Just once. It was enough. Satisfied, he turned back to Naomi and smiled again, this time with something playful behind it. "Now," he said, clapping his hands together, "I heard there's no better slice of pie in 3 counties. Can we test that rumor?" Laughter rolled through the room again, lighter this time. Naomi smiled and wiped a tear quickly with the back of her wrist. "You want apple or peach?" she asked, trying to keep her voice from shaking. He grinned. "Surprise me." She turned, hustled back to the kitchen, and started cutting pies like her life depended on it. Outside, someone had hooked a speaker to the back of a bike. Classic rock floated into the warm evening air. Kids from the neighborhood rode their tiny bicycles between the chrome-lined motorcycles like minnows in a sea of sharks. No one minded. A few of the bikers even gave out candy and fist bumps. Old-timers leaned against lampposts, shaking their heads, but smiling. Naomi's friends worked like clockwork, refilling drinks, bussing tables, taking orders. It felt like a restaurant and a revival at the same time. And right in the center, moving like a storm with a purpose, was Naomi Carter. Black apron stained, hands flour-dusted, hair tied back tight. A woman who'd been called a traitor, disrespected, forgotten. Now standing in the middle of a miracle she had sparked just by doing the right thing. She caught Hank again across the room. He was leaning against a pillar, hand resting near the hospital band still tied to his wrist. And this time, he smiled. The sun dipped low behind the rooftops of Willow Creek, casting everything in warm amber. Naomi stood on the front steps of the diner, arms crossed loosely over her chest, apron still crooked and dusted in flour. Behind her, the sounds of clinking dishes, laughter, and music still filled the air like background prayer. The street was full but calm now. The chaos had softened into rhythm. Conversations spilled from tables. Locals and bikers sat shoulder to shoulder like it had always been that way. She turned to head back inside when Roy and Linda approached. They looked tired, but there was a brightness in their faces, something lighter than the burden they carried when they first walked in. Roy held a package in his hands. Brown paper, a little worn at the edges. He held it out. "From all of us," he said simply. Naomi took it gently, slowly pulling back the paper. Inside was a black leather vest. Heavy. Supplemental stitched across the back in thick, careful thread were the words, "Carter's Diner, Friend of the Reapers," and just below that, a second patch. Protected. Naomi didn't speak. She couldn't. She ran her fingers over the stitching, throat tightening, eyes burning. Roy placed a hand softly on her shoulder. "You stood up when it mattered. Most people don't." Linda added quietly, "We don't forget kindness. Not ever." Tucked into the vest's inside pocket was a folded note, handwritten. Naomi didn't need to open it to know whose handwriting it was. Still, she did. The letters were shaky, but clear. "Thank you for seeing the man, not the jacket." Jessie smiled today. First time in weeks. She wants to meet you. Hank. Naomi held the note against her chest for a long, quiet moment. Inside the diner, she found a space on the wall, right beside her father's faded photograph and his old stained apron. She hung the vest like it belonged there all along. Past and present, struggle and strength, right there on display. As she stepped back to look at it, the bell above the door jingled one more time. She turned, and her breath caught. Officer Dean Harper stood just inside, hat in hand, shoulders stiff like the uniform didn't fit anymore. He stepped forward slowly, glancing at the room filled with bikers, locals, and the scent of fried chicken and cinnamon pie. Naomi didn't flinch. "Coffee?" He nodded once. "Please." She poured it without ceremony, slid the mug across the counter like she would for anyone else. No smile, no hate, just even. Dean wrapped his hands around the cup. Looked like he wanted to speak, but whatever words he had never made it out. Finally, he muttered, "Good turnout today." Naomi said nothing. Dean stared into the black swirl of his coffee like it might tell him what to say next. "Town's changing," he said. Naomi didn't agree. She didn't argue. She just picked up a towel and started wiping the counter again. Dean stayed a while. Didn't cause trouble. Just drank in silence while the world moved around him. Days passed, and Carter's diner didn't empty. If anything, it got busier. Locals came back, quietly at first, then boldly. Tourists showed up too, drawn by rumors of the diner where 200 bikers came to back one black woman's stand. Teenagers took selfies by the vest on the wall. Truckers started adding it as a pit stop on their routes. Mrs. Worthington became a regular again, brought pie recipes to trade. Her newest one, Pecan Whiskey Crumble, became the Wednesday special. Joe Larkin brought his grandkids on Saturdays to see the bikes lined up like chrome soldiers in the lot. Deputy Laura Miles started coming in plain clothes. She left her badge at home, but she always left a tip twice the size of her bill. And through it all, Naomi remained the heartbeat in the middle of it all. She poured coffee, flipped pancakes, told stories, listened, laughed. And sometimes, when the diner was loud and full and alive again, she'd glance at the vest hanging on the wall, feel its weight without touching it, and remember what it really meant. That sometimes doing the right thing will cost you everything, but sometimes it gives you more than you ever imagined. She stepped outside one evening to catch her breath. The street buzzed. A kid zipped by on a scooter. A biker handed a teenager his helmet to try on. The world felt whole in a way it hadn't in years. Then she spotted Hank. He was standing with Roy and Linda near the corner. Still looked tired. Still wore the hospital bracelet. But there was something new on his face. Hope. Naomi walked over. "Hey," she said softly. Hank looked up. His voice was thick. "Jesse got some news today. Early signs. Treatment might be working." Naomi gasped, hand flying to her mouth. "That's amazing." "She wants to meet you," Hank said. "Said you sound like the kind of woman she hopes to be." Naomi blinked hard, nodded. "I'd like that. I'd like that a lot." As the last of the sunlight kissed the rooftops, Naomi stood on the front steps of her family's diner, watching the town she thought had abandoned her learn how to open its heart again. Not with speeches, not with slogans, but with seats shared, names remembered, and courage poured one cup at a time.